Hey, welcome back to Mr. Mig's Classroom. I'm Mr. Mig, and in this video, I want to talk about applying to law school. I told you that I've become a law student. I've entered law school, and I'm a law student now. And so I wanted to start making videos for those who were interested in applying to law school and becoming law students and becoming lawyers. So this video, I'm going to go over basically the basic steps that you need in order to apply for law school. So I put on here that you need 6 items, must have to apply for law school. Really, honestly, it's 5. You don't really need this addendum, but I'll get into that. It's optional, but I put it on here because I think it's important to have. But I just wanted to give the caveat it's not required. So, first thing you definitely need is a bachelor's degree. You need a bachelor's degree from a 4-year accredited university. You could have any major. It doesn't matter if your major is music or engineering or business or mathematics or music or I hope not, but even if you picked political science, yes, you could still apply to law school. It doesn't matter what major you have, and I'll get more into that in a different video, but honestly, if you're in high school and you're thinking about you want to become a lawyer and you're going to go to undergrad, I recommend you do not pick political science. A lot of people going to law school have political science degrees, so you're just not going to stand out. I'll get into a different video on why and what majors I recommend, but for this video, I just want you to know any major qualifies for applying to law school. It really does. It really does. So any major is fine as long as it's from a 4-year accredited university. Has to be a bachelor's degree. Um, Next thing you need is an LSAT score. This is going to be really, really important. I would say it's even more important than your undergraduate GPA. Um, for two reasons. A, because it's usually seen as a little bit more important when schools are looking at admitted students. And B, if you're like me and a lot of law students, you're probably already done undergrad. If you're looking into going to law school now, you're probably already done undergrad. So you can't affect your undergraduate GPA, but you can absolutely affect your LSAT score. Let me say that again. You can make a difference on your LSAT score. You need to try really hard on your LSAT. The reason I say that is just a few points in an LSAT score. If you go from, say, a 157 to a 160, can make thousands of dollars of difference in scholarships, and it can make a difference on what schools will accept you and what won't. Your LSAT score is going to be huge in who will and will not accept you and how much money they're willing to give you in scholarships. Invest the time and invest the money in a good LSAT score. I would say you should study between 2 and 6 months. So I would say an average of 4 months. That's how much I studied for the LSAT. 4 months. I'm not misstating that. Really put that much time into it. If you have the money, pay for classes to help you prep for the LSAT. It's worth it. Even if you spend a few $1,000s on it. I know that sounds outrageous, right? I didn't spend that much. I bought a book. I regret not spending more money. I wish I would have spent $1,000 on it. Because again, a few points in your LSAT score difference could make thousands of dollars of difference when you go to apply for law school. So take the time. Not everybody has $1,000 to throw on LSAT courses. So I get it if you don't. Again, I didn't. I went and I bought a book. It cost me, I don't know, $60 or something. I can't remember how much. And I use that to study. Whatever it is, how much ever money you have, try to invest it so you can get the best LSAT score you can. Because as you'll see in the next slides, it's gonna make a difference, a huge difference on your what law school you'll get into and how much money they'll give you, which is more important. And I'll talk about the whole money thing and the scholarship thing in another video because it's really law school is a different animal than undergrad or other graduate programs. There's really this weird thing with scholarships. So I'll put another video out for that. You really want to hear that one. Next things you need is you do have to have letters of recommendation. Usually, schools want 2 to 4 letters of recommendation. You have to have a personal statement. Look, I'm not going to say the letters of recommendation and the personal statement will jump you from getting to a low tier school to a high tier school. They won't. The most important things are going to be your undergraduate GPA and your LSAT score. But if you have a lousy personal statement, if it was rushed when you wrote it and has grammar errors and no substance to it, it could be something that a reason for why a school will deny you. So maybe you had great LSAT score, maybe you had a great undergrad GPA, but you had a lousy personal statement. A school might deny you for that because remember, as a lawyer, you're a professional writer. And so they're going to look at that personal statement to see how well you can write. And if you do a lousy job on it, that's going to be a good reason for them to not accept you, especially if you're right there on the cusp. A personal statement can absolutely make the difference of getting in and not getting in if you're right there on the cusp and they're deciding between you and a few other students. Um, the other thing the personal statement is great for is if you're an older student like me. I started law school late. Um, and so, if you're an older student, you might have some stories to tell. You might have some experiences. This might be a great place to talk about your work experience. Maybe you were in the military, or maybe you were in the Peace Corps, or you traveled overseas, you speak multiple languages, whatever it might be. This could be a great place to put those stories in. I'll get more in depth about personal statement in another video, but the personal statement should not just be a restatement of your grades from undergrad. Your transcript does that. Your personal statement doesn't need to do that. All right, on to the next thing, the addendum and the diversity statement. This is optional. They are generally not required. However, I recommend putting them in there. It's two different things. I put them together because they're both optional things, and some schools will only have a space for one. The addendum, I'll start with the addendum, is, let's say you're a splitter and you had a high LSAT score but a lower GPA, and you want to explain why your GPA wasn't great. That's what the addendum's for. It's to give reason why either your GPA or your LSAT score doesn't represent you as a student and doesn't represent how well you'll do in law school. For example, I wrote an addendum because I had a very good graduate GPA, but my undergraduate GPA was only average, and so I wanted to state why it didn't represent me and why my graduate GPA represented me more as a student. And the reason that I said and it was the truth, is when I was an undergrad, I was very against student debt. So I took no loans, which meant I was really poor, and I had to work full time. I had to work 40 hours a week so I could pay for college when I was going to college. I was working 40 hours a week while I was going to school full time. Obviously, this caused me to have worse grades, right? If I would not have worked at all, I would have had more time to study, and I definitely, without a doubt, would have had higher GPAs. I was able to evidence this further with my graduate GPA. In graduate school, I only worked 10 to 20 hours a week, and it was a graduate assistantship. So it wasn't as hard. I didn't think it was as hard as working what I did when I was an undergrad. And so I had way more time to dedicate to studying, and therefore my GPA was higher, despite the fact that my graduate classes were undoubtedly much harder than my undergraduate classes. I still had a higher graduate GPA. So that I talked about in the addendum, and that's what the addendum's for. Diversity statement, I don't want people to get confused with this. It could be more than just talking about, say, gender or race or sexual orientation or religion. Those things you could talk about in diversity statements, but you could also talk about what makes you unique as a person in other ways. Maybe, again, you speak multiple languages. Maybe you have some very interesting work experience. Maybe you've traveled overseas, or you've done some things that make you stand out. That's the point of diversity. The purpose of diversity is that schools don't want everyone who's the same. They want people who are different, that have different points of views, different ways of thinking, and more importantly, have had different experiences in life. And so if you've done things that give you a unique perspective, and you've have different experiences that could make you valuable in that school, you want to talk about that. That's a great place to put it, is that your unique experiences could also go in your diversity statement to make you stand out. Um, Anyway, those are what the diversity statement and the addendum are. The last thing that you definitely need, most schools will require your resume. You want to make sure you have that, especially if you're an older student and you have some experience to put in there. Make sure you take some time to make your resume look nice. Next thing I want to talk about is graduate versus undergraduate GPA. So if you have a graduate degree and you had a really good GPA, I have bad news for you. Law schools don't care about your graduate GPA. Let me say that again, because law schools do not care about your graduate GPA. Now, I'm not saying they don't care about grad school. I have an MBA. So that could make the difference. That shows that, hey, you are more likely to be successful in graduate school. You've done graduate school, but they're not going to evaluate your graduate GPA when comparing you to other students. They're only going to look at your undergraduate GPA when evaluating you against other students. The reason they give for this, which I don't believe, but the reason they give is that all students have an undergraduate GPA, whereas not all students who are applying to law school have a graduate GPA. So therefore, they use the undergraduate GPA. This way, it's a even playing field. Now, again, I don't buy that. I think the real reason they don't consider graduate GPA is because they have to state their average undergraduate GPAs and their undergraduate GPAs altogether when they for their 509 reports with the ABA. So when they are reporting to the American Bar Association, the ABA, they have to state their undergraduate GPAs, not their graduate GPAs. And when they're being looked at for rank, it's their undergraduate GPAs that are being looked at by different organizations. So for that reason, that's why they care more about your undergraduate GPA. Again, your graduate GPA could make, the fact that you have a graduate degree could make a difference if you're right on the border, but your graduate GPA is not going to help you get more scholarship money. Sorry to say. Definitely would have been nice for me because I had a very good graduate GPA, but it's not going to make a difference on who's going to accept you and how much scholarship they give you. And that brings me to the two most important factors. What are law schools going to look at when they're evaluating you? Out of those six things I mentioned, the two most important factors are going to be your undergraduate GPA. Sorry for those people like me, but it's going to be your undergraduate GPA and your LSAT score. And I would say the LSAT score is a little bit more important than the undergraduate GPA. And I say that because the LSAT is more predictive of bar passage than undergraduate GPA is. Now, both combined are more predictive of bar passage than either alone. But schools really care about students passing the bar. It makes a difference in their rank, and it makes a difference to the ABA. If too few of their students, of a law school students, pass the bar, if they have a lot of students who fail the bar, they could lose accreditation. So they want to admit students who are going to pass the bar. And that's why they really care about LSAT score. And that's why LSAT score is going to matter a little bit more than undergraduate GPA. The other reason that I say under the LSAT score is really important for you, for people who are watching this who want to apply to law school, is again, you probably already have your undergraduate GPA. You're probably done with undergrad. So there's no changing it. You can't do anything about it. Again, you can't even go back and get a different graduate degree because they're not going to look at that GPA. So your undergraduate GPA, if you're done with undergrad, if you have your bachelor's degree, it's locked, it's set. You can't do anything about it. But you absolutely can do something about the LSAT. You can study for it. You can take it multiple times. You can take it like up to 5 times, which you should do. So those are the two most important factors, and they're going to matter about getting admitted as well as how much scholarship money schools are willing to give you. So on this next slide, I want to just show you kind of a cross section of different schools. So basically, I have the number one law school in the country is Yale, not Harvard, contrary to public opinion. Harvard is actually ranked number 5. Still a very good school. But I put number 1 in here, top tier school. Then I put Georgia, number 20, which is a top second tier school. Then I put University of Arizona, which is a middle tier, second tier school. Then Chapman, which I would say is a third tier school. And then St. Mary's probably in fourth tier school. Different people have different ideas on what tier, which schools are in, but this is definitely a good cross section of the different rankings of schools. So I just wanted you to see the the typical LSAT scores and GPAs for those schools. So you see Yale here, an extremely difficult school to get into, has a median LSAT score of 175. Median, remember, means middle student, the absolute middle between the highest and the lowest student with LSAT scores who started Yale in 2022. I know this is 2023 down here, but these are students who entered law school in 2022. The median would be the person in the middle, that middle LSAT score. This 171 to 178 is the range. So 171 is the 25th percentile and 178 is the 75th percentile. So 171 doesn't mean the lowest LSAT score of somebody who got into Yale, but just that 25th percentile. So 25% of people who got into Yale had below a 171. Now, don't misunderstand me. Don't take this as me saying, oh, hey, if you got a 171, you'll get into Yale. No, that's just saying the 25th percentile of the students who started Yale Law School in 2022, 25% of them had a 171 and below. That's not to say that that guarantees you entrance. Even a 175 does not guarantee you entrance. That's a very competitive school to get into. Now, if you have a 175 and say you have a 3.9 GPA, you're probably have a good shot you have a shot of getting into Yale. I don't even want to say a good shot because it's such a hard school to get into. Even then, you might not get in because there's so many smart folks, applying to those schools that they're going to look at. This is one where they're going to look at more than just your GPA and your LSAT. They're going to want to see what's in that personal statement, what's in the, what's in your diversity statement, what's in your, the other writings that you send them. They're going to care about those things. What's in your resume? What have you done after undergrad? Um, because it's just so competitive to get into. You see University of Georgia median LSAT score there is 168. Notice the 75th percentile is 169. So that means half of the students have a 168 or higher. But really, it means half the students really have a 168 or a 169, maybe a few higher than that. But most students have a 168, 169. I'll get into another video. This has to do with probably has to do with scholarships. They want to attract really high tier students, so they'll give those people more money. So basically, those students who are getting good scholarships are willing to go in, and those students usually have higher LSATs. Again, if you have a 156, that's not saying you're going to get into University of Georgia. Just because you're within that range doesn't mean you'll get in. It's just saying that's 25% of the people who were accepted and started at University of Georgia in 2022 had a 156. And then there's the corresponding GPAs. Arizona, the median score was a 163. And again, notice the difference here between Arizona, ranked 54, and Chapman, which is a private school, by the way, in California, ranked 109. Once you get out of the top 25, it's not that big of a deal. Like if you go to a school that's ranked 50 versus ranked 90, it's not that big of a deal. And you'll see that it's only a 2-point difference in the median LSAT score between a school that's ranked 54 and a school that's ranked 109. So they're relatively similar competitiveness getting in to University of Arizona versus Chapman. University of Arizona is definitely harder to get into, and state schools, as I'll talk about in another video, can be harder to get into than private schools if we're not talking about the Harvards, Yales, and Columbias, just because they tend to be cheaper, right? So, but again, I'll get into that in a different video. I wanted to show you just one last one, the lower tier schools. St. Mary here, median LSAT score 153, median GPA 3.3, with a range of a 3.03 to a 3.6. Notice how the GPA ranges look a lot bigger. Again, I think this goes back to my point of the fact that LSAT is usually going to matter a little bit more than GPA. All right. When should you apply? How to apply? Let's talk about that for a second. You should really, if you're trying to get into those really competitive schools like a Yale or a Stanford or a Duke University, you should probably have already applied. This video, I'm filming it like around midnight on the 5th of November. So it'll come out probably sometime on the 5th of November. You probably should have applied in September if you want to get into the high tier schools. If you're getting into a middle, or if you're going from middle tier schools, try to apply before Thanksgiving. So in the next few weeks would be a good time. If you see this video later on and you want to get into a higher tier school or even a middle tier school, the sooner you apply, the better. They're only going to have so many slots available. And when they have a student who qualifies, they'll take them. So if you apply in September or October, you have a better chance of getting in with being on that lower end of those ranges we just looked at than you would if you apply in, say, April. So they might have those admissions periods open until even July. A lot of schools will accept applications till July, but you're going to probably get better scholarship offerings if you apply earlier, and certainly have a better chance of getting admitted if you apply earlier. Again, as long as you apply for Thanksgiving, if you're looking in those middle or lower tier schools, you're probably fine. I do not want you to rush your application and submit a garbage personal statement just so you apply earlier. It is not worth submitting a garbage personal statement to apply earlier. Make sure it looks good, because again, you're trying to become a professional writer. That's what a lawyer is in a lot of circumstances. So they're going to want to see quality writing. Make sure your writing is good before you apply. Don't sacrifice good writing so you can apply a few days earlier. How do you apply? We'll get into this more depth in a different video, but the LSAC, you have to go to the LSAC website. The LSAC is the organization that controls the LSAT. And all accredited law schools that I know of require you to go to the LSAC website to apply. Anyway, if you've enjoyed the video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I appreciate you watching. Put a comment in the comment section below if you have any questions, or if you have any other topics about law school that you want me to answer, or about applying to law school that you want me to answer. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Mr. Miggs' Classroom.